First of all, thank you all for being here live, and thank you for anyone who is watching the recorded version. I'm just so excited to talk to you guys about exercise today, and as Kendra alluded to, how to efficiently exercise to fit your workout routine into your busy lifestyle. Just a little bit more about my background. I graduated from the University of Minnesota with a Bachelor of Science in Kinesiology, which just means the study of human movement. After graduating, I started working as an exercise physiologist, as well as conducting my own research as an exercise physiologist. You can see some of highlights there on the screen. After becoming an exercise physiologist, what I really became passionate about is bridging the gap between what us as the exercise science community knows to be true and what the general public believes to be true. And so that's really where my passion is. And that's why I like doing things like this webinar to really help educate and bring to light what we know about exercise and how we can implement the research of exercise into our everyday lives. And so before we dive too deep into the content, what I really like you guys to all think critically about is just where you get your exercise information from typically. And when I ask so many people this question, when I meet new people to start training them, I ask everyone kind of where they've gotten their exercise information in the past. And what a lot of people will tell me is through anecdotal evidence. And you might notice this in your own life when it comes to exercise advice. You are getting a lot of anecdotal evidence, meaning you see a friend or you see a family member who is doing something and it's working really well for them. So you ask them a little bit more about it, and then you try to implement that thing. And it turns out whatever they were doing doesn't really work for you. You're not finding the same result, and you get a little bit discouraged, and maybe you stop exercising or doing the diet that you were doing altogether because you're not getting the same result as your friend. Or maybe you saw a blog post or your favorite social media influencer or whoever it might be. You saw something they were doing. They look really good. You like the way they look. You like the result that they've gotten. So you try to do what they do and it just doesn't work for you. And you think there's something wrong with you. And that's never the case. The case is you're probably just listening to the wrong resources, trying the wrong things. When exercise advice isn't evidence-based, it might work for someone, but it won't work for everyone. It's not going to be the optimal way to exercise. So part of the reason there is this gap between what the science community, exercise science community knows to be true and what the general public thinks to be true is just a lot of the time the general public doesn't have those resources or don't know where to find those resources to get actual evidence-based exercise advice. And so that's what we're going to be really talking about today. What type of exercise should you be prioritizing so that you don't have to waste hours a week in the gym? And then how do we actually perform the exercises so you're not wasting a lot of time when you're actually in the gym? You want to get the most out of your workouts. You want to get all the wonderful benefits of exercise, but we want to do it in as little time as possible so you can spend more time with your family, get your work done, things other than exercise. So the first thing that we're going to talk about here, and Kendra's advancing the slides. My slides weren't working, so just bear with us as we work through this a little bit. But the first thing I want to talk to you guys about is why strength training is going to be the most effective way to lose fat. And I like to start about talking about weight loss and fat loss because 9 times out of 10, when you ask someone why are they engaging in exercise, the first answer that's going to come out of their mouth, if they're being honest, is they want to lose weight. And what they really mean when they say they want to lose weight is they want to lose fat. And the problem is when people have a weight loss goal or people have a fat loss goal, the number one thing that they do is cardiovascular type exercise or aerobic exercise. Things like running, elliptical, biking, swimming, those type of cardiovascular exercise. That's what they prioritize in their workouts. And that's really backwards. And so we're going to jump into the research. I'm not going to try to bore you going through all the details. As you've seen, I've kind of highlighted those bullet points, and we'll take these one by one. But this is an awesome study done at the University of Duke in North Carolina and then published in the Journal of Applied Physiology. And this is a really awesome study. It's very well done. As you can see, there's 119 subjects, age ranged from 18 to 70. So we've got a lot of subjects with a large age range. And what's really cool about this study done at Duke is they did 3 exercise groups One was a resistance training group or strength training, weightlifting group. One was an aerobic training, or in this case, that means running. They were doing cardiovascular exercise, they were running. And then there was a third group in this study, and that group was doing both resistance exercise, they were weightlifting, and they were running. So that group was spending twice as long as of the twice amount of time in the gym as the other two groups because they had to do both interventions. Okay, most studies that compare weight loss and they're trying to compare resistance exercise or strength training to cardiovascular exercise, they have a third group that's a control, and that third group is typically not doing any exercise or they're going to the gym and they're stretching. So this study is really cool because they had these three groups and the way that was set up. Yes, the subjects were both men and women. You're right. A lot of times hormones aren't taken into account. That's a great question. These were both men and women in this study. Thank you for that question. 8-month long exercise protocol. So this is a really long-term study, which allows us to draw some really good conclusions. Now, what we saw in all three groups over the course of 8 months is all three groups lost fat, and they all lost fat at a similar rate. But what's different with the groups that were engaging in resistance exercise is that they had better body composition because they lost fat at the same rate or actually a little bit significant higher rate. But what those groups were able to do is lose that weight, but maintain their muscle mass and actually increase their muscle mass over the course of that 8 months. So the groups that were engaging in resistance exercise had a better body composition over the course of the 8 months. But what's really profound about this study is this last part on the last bullet there. There's no significant difference in body composition between the group who for 8 months only did strength training, only did resistance type exercise. And in this study, that was twice a week. And the group that was doing resistance exercise and aerobic training. So the group that was spending twice as long in the gym when it came to body composition did not see twice as much results. In fact, they didn't see any more significance of results. So when it comes to your goal of weight loss, or when it comes to your goal of fat loss, so many times we associate cardiovascular type exercise as the number one thing you can do from an exercise standpoint to lose weight. And what we really need to do is build a foundation of strength training so that you can lose fat, maintain or build your muscle so you're actually making a significant change in your body composition. And at the end of this presentation, we're going to really talk about why is it dangerous to lose some muscle. So I don't think I need to convince anyone here that strength training is going to help you get stronger and build muscle. We kind of already knew that, but a lot of people don't realize it's more effective way to lose fat. And I'm going to peel that layer back, just explain the mechanisms at work. So Kendra, let's advance to this next slide, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into why strength training is so profound when it comes to fat loss. And there's really three things at play here. Number one, in the workout itself, based on however long you're going to be in the gym, you're going to burn more calories strength training than you will from cardiovascular type exercise. So let's say you have two options when you walk into a gym, right? You could go to the cardiovascular equipment, you could go for a run or elliptical or bike, or you could go to the strength training equipment, right? And you have 30 minutes of time to exercise that day. And let's say you go and you choose the cardiovascular exercise. You're going to be burning probably about 300 calories in your 30 minutes to an hour of cardiovascular exercise. And you're going to be burning about 300 calories during your 30 minutes to an hour of resistance type exercise. So in the workout, for the same amount of time, you're burning about the same amount of calories. There's not a big significant difference there. But where strength training is so profound when it comes to the calorie burn is you burn more calories the hour after you're done strength training. So you stop exercising, your body goes into hyperdrive, burning lots of calories. And why is that? It's because when you're strength training, you're breaking down your muscle tissue, right? You're leaving that workout weaker than you were prior to the workout. And you should be able to feel that after a strength training workout. It might be harder to go up and down the stairs. You feel your arms are a little tired. Like you should feel a little weaker. And Kendra can attest to that, I know. But you should feel that. And so that recovery costs lots of calories to recover that muscle tissue. And so that hour after your workout, when your body's going to hyperdrive to really repair that muscle tissue, you're going to burn more calories from that than you did in the actual workout. So you still worked out for 30 minutes, but your calorie burn that day was significantly higher. And as we go into this next bullet here, Kendra, what you'll also see is in the short term is your body doesn't fully recover your muscle tissue in just 1 hour. It takes 48 hours, 2 full days to completely recover your muscles to the point of supercompensation. Supercompensation just means stronger than you were prior to the workout, right? Your muscles have recovered not only to the same spot they were, but even stronger than you were before. Like I said, that takes 2 full days. So while you're recovering that muscle tissue for those 2 days, you're going to be burning 7 to 11% more calories because of your elevated resting metabolic rate. Resting metabolic rate is just how many calories you burn at rest. If you laid in bed all day, you didn't move a muscle, you'd still be doing bodily function, so you'd still be burning calories. That's your resting metabolic rate. And that's going to be elevated 7 to 11% while you're recovering. So if you're strength training 2 to 3 days per week, you essentially always have an elevated resting metabolic rate as opposed to if you had chose to just engage in cardiovascular exercise. So while you're recovering and your resting metabolic rate is higher, you can still engage in cardiovascular exercise. You can engage in yoga. You can engage in any other type of exercise that you want, knowing that you're still burning more calories from recovering from your strength training. And now you're burning even more calories from the other type of exercises that you like to do. Okay. And as we get into this last point here, Kendra, in the long term, people who have more muscle mass burn more calories. Just like it costs a lot of calories, costs a lot of energy to build muscle tissue, it costs a lot of calories to maintain and have muscle tissue on your body. So if you have a person who weighs 150 pounds and they have 100 pounds of lean tissue, they have 100 pounds of lean mass, muscle mass, and you have the same, another person who weighs the same amount, 150 pounds, but they have 120 pounds of their weight is muscle. Well, that person who has 120 pounds of muscle is going to burn a significantly amount of more calories than the person who just had 100 pounds of muscle. So you're burning more calories in the short term, but it's also easier to then keep the weight off once you actually lose it if you're engaging in strength training and increasing your muscle mass, because you're going to have more muscle mass and you're going to be burning more calories. So both short and long term, strength training is really effective and really efficient to losing fat because we don't have to spend so much time in the gym when we're engaging in strength training, like I alluded to, and we'll dive in a little bit deeper, but really 2 times per week is going to be plenty when it comes to strength training. So that's why we really want to build a good foundation of strength training, and then where we see fit on top of that, based on the amount of time that you have left in your week, you can start adding other type of exercise on top of that. Now, we all know that exercise can make us healthier when it comes to fat loss, when it comes to muscle growth, strength gain. But if that doesn't get you excited to exercise, if you're happy with the way you look, then I hope this next portion of the presentation will get you a little bit more excited. So this was another research paper done on the elderly population. That means ages 60 and higher. This was also both men and women. This was at the University of Sao Paulo in Brazil. Brazil is one of the leading countries in exercise research. Their culture really values exercise, and therefore their universities study exercise really well. So this is an awesome study on the mental health and cognitive function. This was 62 subjects, so a little bit smaller than our previous study, but still a really good sample size. They were split into 3 groups for this study. Control group, this time stretching, a moderate intensity resistance training group, and a high intensity resistance training group. Now, in this particular study, the way they're using the word intensity, it simply is associated with weight. So moderate weight, high weight. And to get a little bit more specific, moderate weight is 50% of the maximal amount of weight the person could lift. And high intensity, in this case, means 80% of the maximal amount of weight they could lift. So heavier weight, lighter weight. Okay, there was a physical, cognitive, and mood test done before and after the intervention. Again, this was a super long intervention, 24 weeks, which is awesome. You'll see a lot of studies that are 8 or 12 weeks. This is over twice as long as that. So some good conclusions here. Now, why are they studying the elderly population when we're looking at cognitive function? It's because their cognitive function has already started to decline a little bit. So we can measure changes a lot easier in the elderly population, but that doesn't mean we can't extrapolate what happens and what we see in the elderly population to a little bit of the younger population. So if you're not over the age of 60, this is still very applicable to you. But as we go into the findings here, we can see that both the moderate and the higher intensity groups had a significantly higher physical profile. So they were stronger, they had more muscle, they had better body composition than the group that was just going into the gym and stretching. I don't think that is a very profound finding. I think we can all kind of draw that conclusion. But what is really cool is that the high intensity group, the group that was using high weight, and the group that was using a moderate weight or a lighter weight, they did not see significant differences from each other when it came to their physical profile. So this is something that the exercise community understands really well, but this is still a very common fallacy amongst a lot of people. They think a heavier weight with less reps is going to give them one result, and they think a lighter weight with more reps is going to give them a completely different result. Well, what we know to be true is that if you're eliciting a certain level of fatigue into your muscle tissue with a certain weight, if you use a completely different weight but get your muscle tissue to the same level of fatigue, you're going to get the same result. So it's not about how much weight you're using, it's about how fatigued you are getting in the workout. And that can be done effectively with a lighter weight or a heavier weight. Okay. So another great finding from this study, and a little bit more having to do with mental health and cognitive function, is that the groups that were engaging in resistance exercise had a significantly higher mood profile than the control group, the group that was just going into stretch. So if we're talking about increasing your serotonin levels and decreasing the cortisol levels, it's not enough to just go into the gym and move. We got to go into the gym and actually challenge ourselves physically and mentally to allow those changes to happen. And as you can see going into this last bullet point here, is that the improvement on the cognitive tests from the moderate and high intensity intervention groups suggests that they had an improvement in their short and long-term memories, in addition to a significant improvement in attention over the control group. Okay, so the groups that were engaging in resistance type exercise were able to improve their short and long-term memory along with their attention span. Now, why is this? More research would need to be done to understand the exact mechanisms behind why resistance exercise helps increase cognitive function, and specifically when it comes to memory. But what these scientists hypothesize from this paper is that due to the increased blood flow that you get from exercise, specifically strength training, when you're strength training, you have lots of blood flow into your muscles. That increase in blood flow is increasing blood flow into your brain. Therefore, you're getting more oxygen into your brain, you have better circulation throughout the day. So when you do something like read a book, you have more oxygen going into your brain while you're reading that book. You have a better attention span while you're reading that book, and therefore you're able to retain that information a little bit better. Again, that's just a hypothesis. We don't know the exact mechanisms at play, but this is continuously shown in researches that resistance type exercise and memory have a lot of correlation, especially in a long-term type studies. Just reading this question here. Could the increase in exercise and mood also impact stress level, which is related to memory and attention? I'm guessing you're asking if the increase in exercise could decrease your stress, which helps you have a better attention span. Of course, if you're less stressed, you're going to have better attention. That's absolutely a very valid point and a very good hypothesis. Again, we would need to do more research to know for sure, but there is a lot of research on exercise of all kinds and reduction in stress. And I'm sure there's a correlation between lower stress levels and higher attention and better memory. So absolutely, that is a fair assumption to make in this case as well. But again,
yeah, that's if I could just jump in, that's absolutely true. So that's a great point that someone made in the chat, is that there is this, you described the connection between that physiological effect, the blood flow to the brain and all that, and that increasing memory and attention. And then we know from the stress side that if we can lower our stress, that also improves focus and attention, because those stress hormones aren't surging through our bodies and we're not caught up in sort of fight or flight and we've talked in some of our other programs about the neurobiology, how the brain reacts under stress. So when we can use strength training to reduce that stress level, right, I feel like that could be part of it too. So that's a beautiful connection that someone made, is that we're reducing stress and we're building up that physical strength alongside of it.
Absolutely. I love that. And just to be clear, resistance exercise and all types of exercise is shown to reduce stress. So I'm not necessarily saying resistance exercise is better than another form of exercise when it comes to stress reduction. But remember, when we're going to think about an efficient exercise program where we want to get the most benefit of exercise in as little time as possible, that's where strength training comes into play, and saying like, hey, we can get this benefit just like you could doing any other type of exercise. We can also get it from strength training. And so that's what I really want to make sure I'm being very clear about. In this case, when it was coming to fat loss, I definitely was making the point that resistance exercise is more effective. But when it comes to this, I'm not saying it's more effective than another type of exercise. It's just, if we're thinking about prioritizing our exercise, strength training is great. Okay, so now that we've talked a little bit about fat loss, we've talked about cognitive function, and hopefully you're excited to do some strength training, but let's talk about what can happen if you decide not to engage in strength training. And before I jump into all of the words and the graphs and everything on this slide, I kind of cue up a hypothetical scenario for us all listening to this call. And so let's say everyone on this call, we are all cousins. We're cousins because we have a common uncle. His name is Uncle Jim, and Uncle Jim is now 72 years old. Uncle Jim was pretty fit in his early adult life, but as he kind of got into his older life, he stopped exercising as much, and now he's 72, and unfortunately, he's clinically obese now, which means he also has high blood pressure, and he's just been diagnosed at the age of 72 with type 2 diabetes. So he's running into a little health complications, which is really common as people start to age, especially get into their 70s. Now, we get a call from our Uncle Jim one day, and unfortunately, he's calling us because he fell in the bathroom and he's having a hard time getting up from that fall. So we go to our Uncle Jim's house, we take him to the hospital. Turns out, unfortunately, he has a broken pelvis, and then due to that broken pelvis, he gets a urinary tract infection. So he's got a little bit of health complications on top of his health complications, right? And now, because Uncle Jim was not the most fit person going into that broken pelvis and urinary tract infection, it takes him a long time to recover, and he actually never really recovers to the point that he was prior to that incident. And so over the course of the next 16 months, unfortunately, our Uncle Jim falls a couple more times. He runs into some other health-related complications, and our Uncle Jim sadly passes away at the age of 75. And although this is a hypothetical scenario, this is a very real scenario for a lot of people. And we would never attribute our Uncle Jim passing away from, not having a lot of muscle mass or not having a lot of bone density. We would always attribute him passing away from that last health complication that he ran into. But what we don't realize in that case is how being active in his adult life as he starts to age could have really helped him improve his quality of life so he could recover from these health complications, or ideally avoid some of these health complications altogether. So as we transition to the information that you're seeing on this slide, we're going to start in the bottom left with some of this information down there. Okay, so what you're seeing on the bottom left is absolute truths that happen to the human body as it ages. So this is not 80% of the people on this call, 60% of the people on this call. Unfortunately, this is happening to everybody on this call. So after the age of 30, your muscle mass is declining at a rate of 8% each decade. So if you're over the age of 30, you're losing close to 1% of your muscle mass each year. Your metabolism has slowed down at a rate of 10% each decade after the age of 20. So every year after the age of 20, you are burning less calories, 1% less calories every single year after the age of 20. And then your bone density is deteriorating at a rate of 1% per year after the age of 35. And if you happen to be a woman, you're losing that at a rate of 20%, or you're losing 20% of your muscle mass 5 to 7 years after menopause. So women lose their bone density at a higher rate than men due to hormonal changes. Okay, and then what you're seeing on the bottom right is what happens when we run into these these things that are associated with aging, you start to get osteoporosis. And so your bones are brittle and it's easier to break your bones. If you fall, if you get in a car accident, God forbid something like that happens, it's going to be a lot easier for you to break your bones, like our Uncle Jim. Okay. You're going to have an increased risk of falling because you have less muscle mass. So you have less stability, you have less balance. So you're going to be more likely to fall. You're going to have less independence, which is going to put you in part of the elderly loneliness epidemic, which is just, unfortunately, a lot of our elderly population is really lonely because they're not independent and they're not able to do the social functions that they would like to be doing as they age. So they end up being lonely. And as we saw with our Uncle Jim, you're going to have a longer recovery process than you otherwise would have had you had more muscle mass and more bone density. And you're going to get less recovery, meaning you're not able to get back to that baseline function that you were prior to that incident. Now, as we transition into these graphs that I have here, top left is what we're going to start with. The top left is in a sterile environment, a laboratory setting. Top left is exactly what you would see. So you can see in the early life, as humans develop, as we age in our early life up until the age of 30, we're building muscle mass just by naturally growing. And then right as we get into that adult life, age 30, we start to decline. So the bottom blue line, the brighter blue line that you're seeing on that left graph, that is people who never engage in strength training. That's going to be their muscle strength, muscle mass, and function over the course of time. Get to age 30 and it starts to decline. So those people might be really active. That could be a marathon trainer. Like they could be running several marathons, but they're not engaging in strength training. So they're not building their muscle mass or bone density, even though they're still staying really active. Their muscle mass and bone density is still going down over the course of time. And as you can see with those people who don't engage in strength training, as you get to the age of 60 and into your older life, you are potentially crossing that disability threshold. And that's a physical disability. That might mean you need a walker, a cane, you need assistance to do anything. You're going to unfortunately be much more likely to enter that disability threshold. Now, the top line on that left graph, that darker blue line, those are individuals who engage in strength training over the course of their entire lifetime. Now, as you can see, you're not going to beat Father Time, right? You're still going to decrease in strength and muscle mass over the course of time, but your line is a lot flatter to the point where you're not entering that disability threshold. Okay, and that is the real reason why strength training is so profound and why, especially as we start to get to the age 30, 40, why it's so important to maintain as much muscle mass and function as you can as you get into your older life. So what we see on this right graph is closer to a real world scenario and kind of what I outlined with our Uncle Jim. So the normal decline that you're seeing on the top, the lighter line, that would be, again, in the laboratory setting, right? If we didn't take into account any real world factors. But like I talked about with our Uncle Jim, he was declining, and then he's seeing these punctuated declines where he's been diagnosed with obesity, hypertension, and diabetes. That discourages him from being active. He doesn't feel as good when he's active, and it's harder, so he stops being as active as he was. So he sees that big dip down, and then he kind of maintains where he's at, and then he falls in the bathroom, and then he takes another big punctuated decline. And unfortunately, as he's running into more and more health-related complications, his physical decline's just going lower and lower. And so that is really what we're really trying to avoid when it comes to strength training. We're sure we're trying to lose weight. Yes, we're trying to improve our cognitive function, but what we're really trying to do is improve your quality of life as you age. All right. Kendra, let's go ahead and advance to this next slide. So now that we all understand, like, hey, strength training, got to do it. We're excited to do it, but like, how do I actually implement this into my life in a practical way where I don't have to spend an hour a day, 5 days in a week in the gym, but I can still get all of these wonderful benefits. I can still build muscle and I can still lose fat, improve my cognitive function, all that great stuff. Okay, so here are 5 tips, and then me and Kendra are going to demonstrate some of this stuff so you can actually see what this looks like. But number one thing you need to be doing when it comes to strength training is always doing a full body workout. So many people, when they engage in resistance exercise or strength training, they do a split routine, meaning they do upper body one day, next day they do lower body, next day they do upper body, next day they do lower body, and they're kind of going back and forth. And obviously, that's not very efficient. You have to be strength training every day of the week pretty much to get the same result. Where if we can do a full body workout in one workout, then it's going to be so much more efficient. So when you're structuring these workouts, we want to make it full body, meaning every muscle from your toes to your neck, we want to be strength training. And we can do that effectively in about 8 to 14 exercises. So I'm going to have a handout for you guys where you can see some example exercises. And then I have a full workout routine, 2 separate full body workouts where you can base your workouts off of that. You can use that exact template if you'd like, but it gives you a really good idea of what a full body workout looks like in 18 to 14 exercises. Okay, point number 2, perform 1 set to momentary muscle failure. So again, so many people, when they engage in strength training, they think they need to be doing 3, 4, 5, 6 sets of the same exercise, meaning doing the same exercise repeatedly. But what research continues to show when it comes to strength training is we can get the same result in just 1 set that you can with multiple sets, provided that we take that 1 set to the point of momentary muscle failure. So what momentary muscle failure means is you're doing an exercise to the point where you can't complete another rep with perfect form. Your muscles have broken down so much that they can't complete another rep. And now we just need to stop that exercise, let our muscles repair over the next couple of days, then we can come back and do that exercise again. So we want full body, we want just 1 set. 8 to 15 reps is a safe goal range where you're going to use a moderate to heavy weight, but it's going to be very manageable, so you're going to stay really safe, which kind of leads me to the next bullet point of staying safe. We want to perform the repetitions in a slow and controlled manner. If you are exercising, you should be improving your quality of life. If you get injured, it is not exercise. You are not improving your quality of life. There should be no risk of injury when you're exercising, right? This is why you should not be engaging in CrossFit, because that is a sport. We want to do exercise where we are physiologically challenging our body with little risk of injury. And so that's why we got to move slow. When you move slow, you keep the tension on your musculature away from your joints. And so you are making the workout really efficient as well, because it's just your muscles lifting and lowering the weight. You're not using any gravity. You're not using any momentum. It's truly your muscles doing all of the work. So by moving slow, we're staying safe, which keeps it really efficient because we're never hurt. We never have to take time off of exercise. And we're keeping tension on our muscles, which makes the workout really efficient because it's always our muscles doing the work every time. And so Kendra and I are going to demonstrate what a slow pace actually looks like. But to give you guys a frame of reference, it's about 6 seconds per 1 repetition. So you could do 3 seconds in each direction. What Kendra and I are going to show you today is 4 seconds of lowering, 2 seconds of lifting. But a general rule of thumb is no faster than 6 seconds to keep your slow and controlled repetitions. Number 4 tip to keep your workouts efficient is prioritize and perform multi-joint exercises. Now, in the workout templates I have for you guys, I have already done that for you. In the workouts that we're going to show you with Kendra, they are all multi-joint exercises except for the abdominal one. So you're going to get some really good examples of what those look like. But what a multi-joint exercise is just simply means you're moving at more than 1 joint. When you're moving at more than 1 joint, that means more than 1 muscle group is working at once, which of course will make the workout really efficient. If we're not strength training each individual muscle one by one, we are going to make the workout a lot shorter. So for example, a multi-joint exercise would be a shoulder press. I'm sure everyone maybe has seen a shoulder press before, just pushing straight above your head. That's working your shoulders and triceps sufficiently. So we wouldn't need to isolate the shoulders and triceps that workout. We could just do 1 really good set of shoulder press and then go to a different exercise, and we will have sufficiently trained our shoulders and triceps for that day. Okay, and you can extrapolate that to other muscle groups. Again, in the template that I have, that's already done for you. Okay, last point number 5 here. 2 to 3 full body workouts per week is sufficient for all populations, men, women, children, bodybuilders. You never need to do more than 3 full body workouts per week. For 90% of people, you don't need to do more than twice a week. There are some people that get a little bit more out of their exercise doing 3 times a week. If you just like to be active, you can do three times a week, but you're not getting a significant amount more results from doing 3 versus 2 really focused, intense full body workouts per week. So if you do 2 workouts per week for 30 minutes full body, that might be Monday and Thursday, that might be Tuesday and Friday, that could be Wednesday and a weekend day. Again, leaving those 2 days, allowing your muscles to recover before you engage in that strength training. And again, this is really awesome because then you can go biking, you can hang out with your kids, you can do yoga, whatever else you like to do to stay active. Knowing that we've prioritized strength training, we're getting all these profound benefits. And then whatever you have time for on top of that is great. Now, my last 5.5 tip here is don't exercise alone, even if it's just with a friend. That's going to be so much more productive than when you go alone. And there's a couple different reasons. Now, research shows just having someone watch you in a workout, they don't say anything, they just stare at you in a workout. You are going to push yourself harder in your workout because of that little bit of peer pressure, which is going to get you better results because you're pushing yourself a little bit harder in that workout. So again, just having a friend be there with you, you're going to push yourself a little bit harder in that workout. But if you have a coach coaching you, you're going to push yourself even harder. But on top of that, it's for an accountability aspect too, right? I never work out alone, and that's because I'm human. Even though I love exercise, there's days where I just do not want to do it. Like I need that accountability piece. So when I have my workout on the calendar scheduled with someone else, I am going to show up to that workout more often than not. There are some scenarios where, of course, I need to reschedule or something. But if we have it on the schedule, like I don't want to let that person down. I'm going to do it. So not only for a better workout in the moment, but to hold yourself accountable, I really encourage you to find a personal trainer or find a friend that you can do your strength training workouts, do all of your workouts, but especially your strength training workouts with.